Hi, everybody. Brianna Whitney here, host of True Crime AZ Live. Thank you so much for joining us for this special edition show live from Tucson tonight. I know a lot of you have been following the Nancy Guthrie search and investigation, and that's why it was so important for us to be here this week, covering it all, doing the show live. We are outside the Pima County Sheriff's Department, where they held a big press conference earlier today with a lot of new information. But I know a lot of people know the case. I just kind of want to get people up to speed before we launch into this show. This is an hour-long show. We have 4 live guests standing by ready to take questions, comments in all sorts of parts of this investigation and the coverage. But I also want to hear from you. I am here. You can see my computer in front of me. I'm monitoring comments on YouTube. I've got my information over here, and I'm going to be going back and forth throughout this show. And already one comment came in at the beginning of this. Have you ever seen a story like this? The answer is no. I believe this is the oddest and most strange story and case that I have ever covered in my career, and that is saying something given what true crime is all about. But I want to go over everything that we've learned new today about Nancy Guthrie. Of course, this is Savannah Guthrie's mom, the Today Show co-host. Nancy, abducted from her home late Saturday night, overnight into Sunday morning. This is now day 5 of the search for her, and there are several different things we have learned. As this week has gone on, we learned there were ransom notes that were sent to media outlets. We learned that there was blood on the front porch. We got answers as to whose blood that was today, and there are so much more about this. So let's go over everything that the sheriff, Chris Nanos, gave us in the press conference today, as well as the FBI special agent in charge of the Phoenix division, Agent Yonke. We're going to go over everything that they said that we know at this hour tonight. So we know that Nancy Guthrie vanished. The last time anybody saw her was around 9:45 Saturday night. She had just been dropped off by her son-in-law. She had been eating dinner with her daughter and him, her husband, and that is the last time anybody heard from her. But we had a lot more that was given to us today, and I think the big question for Sheriff Chris Nanos was, do you believe she's alive? And if so, where do you think she is? And the sheriff started his press conference with this.
Right now, we believe Nancy is still out there. We want her home. Our department, the Sheriff's Department, along with all of our partners at the FBI, have been working around the clock. And we just want her home and find a way to get to the bottom of all of this, just as you do.
And the FBI now issuing a $50,000 reward for anybody who can lead to the recovery of Nancy Guthrie or who can lead to the arrest or conviction of the people who abducted her. I want to show you just a little bit of the behind the scenes at the press conference today. This is an all-out media circus. There has been so many people interested in this from around the world. There was an outlet from Australia here today. You have people from all over the nation here. I was talking to BBC earlier today. I've never seen a missing persons case or an abduction case take this off this quickly into the international spotlight with so much care and concern from people. Of course, the Guthrie family, Savannah, her brother Cameron, her sister Annie, all very concerned, and we're going to get into more of that as well. Let's start with the new information and the new timeline that the sheriff gave us today. This really sets up Nancy Guthrie's last known movements and then when the sheriff's office or the sheriff's department got involved. So I'm going to read off of this. It was at 5:32 p.m. that Nancy Guthrie took an Uber to her family's home for dinner. This is Saturday, January 31st. We now know that they've made contact with the Uber driver as part of this investigation. They have questioned that Uber driver, so we do know that aspect of this case. At 9:48 p.m., Nancy is dropped off at her Tucson home in the Catalina foothills by her son-in-law, and then the garage door opens. At 9:50 p.m., the garage door closes. Now, this is where it gets really, really important, the timeline here, because this all goes to exactly when she was taken from her home. At 1:47 a.m., the doorbell camera is disconnected, and we could see the frame that was on the front door when we were there. It was gone. At 2:12 a.m., the camera's software detects movement, but there's no video of that available because Nancy did not have a subscription with the company, so the footage wasn't saved. And that's why the sheriff told us that they were trying to forensically get this footage back and try to work with the company. That has not happened yet. We do not have any of the surveillance video. At 2:28 a.m., Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker app disconnects from her phone. So 1:47 a.m., the doorbell's disconnected. 2:12, it detects somebody there, and 2:28, her pacemaker app disconnects from her phone, which would lead you to believe her phone's still in the home, she is taken away. It's about a 25-minute period that they believe something happened before she was taken. At around 11:56 a.m., her family the next day checked on her after she didn't show up for church. She's a devout churchgoer. This was something she always went to, and so friends at church called her family concerned. It was not like her to not show up. So her family goes to her house at 12 a.m. At 12:03 p.m., the family calls 911 to report a missing person, and at 12:15, investigators arrive and begin their search. I want to show you some video, too, of blood evidence at the home. It's apparent that when the family would have gone to search for her, they would have seen a concerning scene at the front door. And part of the reason for that, and we saw it, too, before they put crime tape back up, but when they let the scene kind of like everybody could go up there and see it once they had processed it for the first time, you could see these blood droplets on the front porch. And for a while, they didn't confirm that it was blood droplets, but today, Sheriff Chris Nanos confirming that that blood was some of the first evidence that they sent to a DNA lab up in Phoenix. That was a rapid DNA testing. They got that back thinking that was maybe going to be the most conclusive evidence. It came back positive for Nancy's blood. That tells us obviously she was hurt in some way, but what it doesn't tell us is who the suspect is, because there was no suspect DNA that came back there. We also had new details in the ransom note today. The FBI confirming that in the ransom note, it demanded a certain amount of money, but also the person that wrote this said that Nancy had an Apple Watch and had mentioned a certain floodlight on the house. Now, obviously, anybody could probably walk by and notice a floodlight, but it was something that they took seriously because that was something that was at the scene. They are still investigating this. And when I say they're investigating the ransom note, I mean it because they've already made an arrest of somebody else who allegedly put out there a fake ransom note. And we're going to get more into that person, that imposter, and the arrest that was made later in this show. What did this ransom note say, and what do we know at this hour? Well, we know a deadline has now passed. And why do we know that? Well, at first they were telling us a lot of details about the ransom note, but they weren't telling us exactly what the deadline was. And that's when I asked the special agent in charge about this ransom note, because how long do we go on until you say, yeah, this isn't it? And I want to play that question and his answer for you now. At what point do you deem the ransom note not credible if there is no communication that follows up since you received it? Like, what's that timeline where you say, no proof of life, there's no more, this isn't credible?
I think we start to look at what the deadlines were in the note. First, I think, was 5 o'clock today, and then it had a second deadline after that. So we are continuing. In a normal kidnapping case, there would be contact by now, trying to discuss that. But those are the time frames we are looking at as we move forward.
Are you able to say that second deadline that was given?
I don't have that with me right now.
Okay, so he ended up elaborating just a little bit more after my question. The second deadline is sometime on Monday, but they didn't give us a time on that, and we don't know how much was being demanded. The other thing they wouldn't go into tonight was if that deadline's not met tonight, and if that deadline is not met on Monday, what's supposed to happen to Nancy Guthrie? And that was something that they do not want to release publicly as of now. They gave us an opportunity today to ask a couple follow-up questions as well. And so I had that question for the FBI agent, but I also had a couple questions for Sheriff Chris Nanos. Now, a lot of people have seen Nancy Guthrie's home now. They were taking evidence out and securing it again yesterday. And that was a bit perplexing because Sheriff Nanos had told us that the crime scene had been completely processed and was clear by Tuesday. So why were they back out there yesterday? Well, it turns out the FBI, I think, wanted to also get in there as well. But it begged the question, why would you have shut down that crime scene so quickly to where those of us like the media, the family, other people could go up there and then come back and put the crime scene tape up? That seems like a problem, and I asked the sheriff about it. I know you had the crime scene process. You said you went back out there. Your partners wanted to see it, but you guys were actively taking out evidence yesterday. Was there something you missed the first time, or did you get a new piece of information that led you to believe you needed to go back out and take more than you had that first day?
You know, I know that we get information that will come, and this is just any crime scene that we look at. We may go out to a crime scene and think we've got it all, go analyze the evidence, and something comes back and says, hey, did you check this? We're not going to just say, oops, and not go.
So did something new come in?
In this instance, it really was the FBI just wanted to go, hey, can we take a look at it?
Are you worried about that being contaminated at all because there was people in now
You
the
know,
house?
I'll let the courts worry about that. We will certainly be open to the courts of anything that's been removed from that house, and we follow the rules of laws. We get court orders and go back and reapply for another warrant if need be. All of those things we're very careful of.
Now, the media kind of pressed Sheriff Nanos on this a couple times, and he did eventually say to another question asked that, you know, playing Monday morning quarterback, looking back, should they have kept the scene secure? Probably. Did they necessarily expect to go back out there? We're not sure. But as they have more partners coming in, more agencies that are working on this with them, it seems like they wanted to get another look. The thing is, though, they took evidence out yesterday, and that likely is being tested right now. What was it that they took out, and why was it? It was like this rectangular, at least that we could see, a rectangular, almost like a mirror type look, but it was covered. So we didn't get a real good, close-up view of what that was. But they are clearly still testing things, and they are clearly still investigating. Let's talk about suspects. The reality is tonight, the sheriff has made it very clear. There are no identified persons of interest, no identified suspects. We know that there was rumors and that there was information circulating that a family member may have been involved. At this point, at least in the investigation, the sheriff says there are no identified persons of interest or suspects. But he also did say that they have not ruled anybody out. There is not one person that they can say absolutely is not involved, did not do this. And I said it a little bit earlier in the show, but they also were questioning that Uber driver that took Nancy to her daughter's home for dinner. He didn't really give a conclusive, is the Uber driver ruled out, but it did seem that they've made contact and they got at least that witness testimony, so to speak, of some of Nancy Guthrie's last movements before this all happened. They also confirmed today that the ransom note that was sent to TMZ and to 2 local Tucson news stations is the same ransom note. And that was something that we believe to be true, but today the FBI confirming that. And to that point, I want to bring in our first live guest tonight, former FBI Supervisory Special Agent Lance Lysing. Lance, can you hear me okay?
Again, Brianna.
Okay, thank you so much. So if people don't know, Lance and I have worked together for many, many years. You've worked on a number of high-profile cases. And when it comes to the ransom note and what we learned today, I want to ask you a little bit more about it. We've been kind of communicating throughout the week, and I know you've been giving some really great analysis from the FBI's standpoint as to what happens now. So based on what the FBI special agent in charge revealed today about what was in the ransom note, these deadlines, what did you make of that information? Does that lead you to believe this is credible or not at all?
Well, very good question. I would like to start off by saying I think the sheriff's saying there aren't any identified suspects and everybody's still in play. That's exactly how they have to play it right now. Any good investigator should be objective like that. The ransom note is just one of those leads right now. After all the information that came out of the press conference, I feel that law enforcement agencies, the FBI and the sheriff's office, aren't quite sure. They have to follow it up through due diligence, and it's probably one of the best things they've got going. But there's some facts that they relayed today that make me suspect the legitimacy of this ransom note. First of all, from the outside looking in, sending it to 3 media outlets and not to the family or to a law enforcement agency, when the motive is financial gain, that is odd. If the motive's ideological and you want to get a statement out and we want people to know, sending it to a media outlet makes sense. And historically, that's how it happens. But if for financial gain, sometimes to a media outlet, but almost always to the family. And then not having any communication with the family or law enforcement since the ransom note came out, that is really unusual. And it doesn't get a kidnapper whose goal is for financial gain anywhere. They have a deadline. They want it met. Talking to the family to get that money in their hands is what they would ultimately want. And they're just not doing that here. So
right.
That's definitely a sign of illegitimacy.
Well, and also too, I know no contact with this person at all, but typically if you have a ransom note, do you see proof of life in some form or fashion, typically from somebody who would send that to say, hey, this is legit?
Yeah, not always. And in fact, the statement the family put out, I know the FBI talked about counseling and trying to help the family through that. It's a very difficult time. No family's ever done that before. So that's exactly what they were doing. And proof of life is textbook. That's one thing you ask for and you try to get. The other thing is a communication line open. And they were begging for that throughout that heart-wrenching statement. So both of those are typical negotiator tactics or investigator tactics in a case like this that they have to get going. Without either of those, proof of life or an open line of communication, the lead goes nowhere. And really nobody wins, kidnappers or law enforcement or the family. It just fates.
That's it. As I'm monitoring some live questions here, somebody asked, is it odd that there were 2 deadlines given and not just one?
It is odd, and what we don't know are the facts around those deadlines. Like there probably were other details within the ransom note that the investigators just aren't willing to make public yet, and that is odd for 2 deadlines. Like you don't hedge your bet. If you're a kidnapper, you're saying, hey, this deadline and that's it, and then only if they miss that deadline or you have other communications about we can't get that much money in time or we can't deliver it that way, then you negotiate, right? There's no line of communication open. There's no negotiation happening here. So it just strikes me as being a bit illegitimate. There are a few other points in there as well. One, you already have a history of fraudulent ransom notes. There was an arrest made today by the FBI on somebody who had done that. So this case is bringing that type of attention and those type of people. And then the last one is the facts. Like investigators are looking very closely at the facts that ransom note portrayed, right? What they knew. And if they knew something that was very exclusive to the crime scene, that would be telling. The facts that they brought up in the press conference, not at all exclusive to somebody who would only know that information if they were in that house and close to the victim. It was piece of information you get from watching the news. So that is another sign that I think may not be a credible ransom note.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I mean, a floodlight and an Apple Watch, there's floodlights on every house and there's an Apple Watch every other person. I mean, those are 2 pretty vague, generic details.
Absolutely.
I thought as well.
And if you're a kidnapper and you want to bring legitimacy to your ransom note because you want the money, right? That's what you want. So you want them to think you're legitimate. You're going to say something very specific, something that only the victim would know, that when you're talking with her, she would tell you, something like that. It doesn't appear that was in this note, but again, we haven't read the note in its entirety.
So what you've learned, do you think this is leaning towards this isn't going to go anywhere with these ransom notes by Monday?
From what we know, and we only know limited amount of facts, but from what we know, one deadline's already passed with no communication. And I think there are some 3 or 4 signs in the information that was provided to the public today that indicate it's suspect, very suspect.
Yeah. And my last question for you, just when you're dealing with a ransom note that comes in, especially if it comes in digitally, how does the FBI trace that? I mean, do you have to go through servers and encrypted IT addresses or IP addresses? Like, what does that look like from an FBI's perspective, and how hard is that to do?
It is harder and harder to do. Luckily, in the FBI, we have experts that's all they do, and that's who I would go and ask, and I'd have them working on it, and they would run it, and oftentimes it would involve sometimes dozens of different subpoenas to different companies as proxy servers back and forth would run to, and sometimes you get nowhere trying to trace that back, but sometimes you do get somewhere. I always found really good information in the text, the context, how it's delivered, what they know, and then here in this case, they wanted money. They likely left some bank account number. They left some means, if it's a legitimate ransom note, some means for the government and the family to deliver that money. So that's another line that they're investigating. The FBI is going down and trying to figure out everything they can about it.
Yeah. Well, Lance, I appreciate you so much. Your analysis is always spot on. I mean, I've appreciated you for years, but especially on something so sensitive like this, so complicated, so bizarre. I really appreciate you joining the show, and I know we'll be in touch.
Thank you, Brianna.
Thank you so much. All right, I appreciate Lance's analysis of the ransom note, and he mentioned that imposter, that fake ransom note. We're going to have that in a live interview on that later in the show. But coming up next, Nancy Guthrie. Who was she? Beloved in this community. What is her family saying? What is her friends saying? We've got a live interview with a KOLD Tucson reporter standing by here. She's going to be joining us live on the other side of this break. Stick with us. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much again for tuning into this special edition of True Crime AZ Live. I am joined in this segment by Mary Coleman. You're an anchor reporter at KOLD here in Tucson, one of the stations that received the ransom note.
Yes.
You've been reporting on this, and what I want to get from you is just, I mean, Nancy Guthrie, staple in this community.
Yeah.
When this first started unfolding Sunday night, and your stations learned about it, what did you know at that time, and was there some concern already from people in this community?
Yeah, absolutely. Just seeing that name, you know, as you mentioned,
Absolutely.
a staple, the mother of Savannah Guthrie, there were a lot of concerns from a lot of us. So, you know, we kind of played the waiting game and tried to see, you know, when people go missing, it's usually pretty quickly in our area that they're found.
Yeah.
And thankfully, that's a great thing, right? Well, this one was a little different because a few hours went by and we heard nothing from law enforcement. So at that point, that's when we started to get a little concerned about where this was going. And then, as you mentioned, we were one of the stations that received that letter. We got that on Monday night. So once we received that and we got PCSD involved, it was apparent that, you know, this wasn't a joke or a hoax of any sort.
Right, right. Learning about Nancy, and I want to spend a little time kind of talking about her.
Yeah.
People are trying to come forward and share things about her. She went to church, she played mahjong. What have you heard just from community people in the neighborhoods, communities and neighborhoods that you're familiar with as the national and international media come here, even us from Phoenix? You know this is your home. What's that like?
Yeah. Well, Tucson, for such a big area of more than 1 million people, it really is a tight-knit community. So it's a small, big city, I like to say. And that area specifically, I mean, you've been out there. It's gorgeous. There's mountains nearby. People are around walking their dogs. People are just so friendly and you know each other's neighbors. And you know, I don't want to indicate that this is what happened, but it's almost an area where people are comfortable, you know, leaving their doors unlocked or something like that, because there's not a lot of crime or bad things that are happening in that area. So in speaking with some of the neighbors and the people who live in that area, it's quite shocking to see that something like this took place in their backyard, and especially to someone who was so heavily involved with the church and seemingly all of these good things, and such a good person. I have not heard anyone say a single bad thing, and I think that's also speaks to, you know, any motive or anything. Police cannot get to the bottom of that, because she seems to be a lovely woman in all aspects.
Yeah, you're right. And even just looking at what Nancy posts about and learning about her life, she loves her family so much, her grandkids, and you know, this has fallen on her 3 children now desperately searching. Savannah Guthrie, of course, today's show co-host, being kind of the leader of the siblings in that charge. I want to take us through some of the videos that the Guthrie family has put out. We'll start with the one from last night. Heart-wrenching words from Savannah, her sister Annie, and her brother Cameron. I want to play a little bit of that video. It was the first video the Guthrie siblings had put out.
Mama, if you're listening, we need you to come home. We miss you. We too have heard the reports about a ransom letter in the media. As a family, we are doing everything that we can. We are ready to talk. However, we live in a world where voices and images are easily manipulated. We need to know, without a doubt, that she is alive and that you have her. We want to hear from you, and we are ready to listen.
Oh, so many people heard that and just latched onto it last night, and that made it feel so much more serious. At that point, because they hadn't said anything yet, you didn't quite know what was going on behind the scenes. No, they're begging for their mother's abductor to come forward. So we had that video, and then tonight, as the 5 p.m. deadline, that first deadline that was given in this ransom note passed, Savannah posted another video, the caption, "Bring her home," and it was her brother this time making a plea. Take a listen.
This is Cameron Guthrie. I'm speaking for the Guthrie family. Whoever is out there holding our mother, we want to hear from you. We haven't heard anything directly, We need you to reach out, and we need a way to communicate with you so we can move forward. But first, we have to know that you have our mom. We want to talk to you, and we are waiting for contact.
So what did you make of this last video that went out? To me, it was, Cameron was pretty quiet in that first video, and I think this time it was kind of like, hey, let's make this another attempt at making contact. But when you saw this one today, what was your first thought?
My first thought is they're taking this very seriously, and they feel like this ransom letter was real. Those deadlines that they had in the letter, we were refreshing our email constantly at the station once 5 o'clock hit to see if, perhaps this person or people sent another email after the 5 o'clock deadline, and we've received nothing so far. But I think, because there was no line of communication between whoever did this with the family is trying to build that line of communication, say, hey, we're here, we want to talk to you, just let us know our mother is okay. And that's the big thing, as you know, is proof of life. I think everyone is just concerned for her safety, and while we do care who this or who these people are or persons, it's difficult because, they just want to know that their mother is okay.
Right, absolutely. And as unfolding as the investigation is, the community coming together as well. They held a candlelight prayer yesterday at a church, and that's when we also learned a little bit more from Nancy's friends. I want to play that sound for you, who were kind of talking about how this is affecting them as her close friends in this city.
I feel like prayer definitely helps with optimism, and hope. And if it is increased by people coming together and being together, then this is what we're doing. This is all we want out of it, is for people to be able to feel like they are doing something, even if it's talking to the universe or talking to God, and, let's do it together.
So, they want Nancy also to know that they're paying attention.
Yeah.
Before you go, just some final thoughts tonight on where this investigation stands. You've been here, you live here, but just what we've seen unfold in such a rapid pace over the last 5 days, but yet nowhere new with Nancy. What comes next for you and your station, even locally here, as you move forward with your reporting?
Yeah, it's such an odd case overall. I know you mentioned that. We've not seen anything like this, mostly because it has been, there have been so many days and we still don't have any new answers. And so all eyes are on everything, especially our email, and especially from some of the places where this person or people could, potentially be giving any information or any indication that Nancy is okay. So, we're just, as you all are as well, I'm sure, just keeping an eye on everything, keeping an ear out, and trying to do some digging into whatever we can, because again, I think even the Pima County Sheriff's Department is still searching for answers themselves. It seems to have stumped a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, too, that it's not just us. It seems like law enforcement, whether they know more behind the scenes or not, and I'm sure they do, it seems they are still very much asking for help tonight. Mary, thank you so much for joining us live. I appreciate all your coverage and your reporting. Mary works for KOLD down here in Tucson. Of course, you can find her on social media, too. She's covering this immensely. Coming up after the break, that fake imposter ransom note, we're going to learn more about who that California man is with our executive producer of investigations at our station. He's coming on live next. Thanks everybody again for joining us for the special edition of True Crime AZ Live from Tucson tonight. I was talking about this before the break. There was a California man who was arrested for being an imposter and circulating a fake ransom note for Nancy Guthrie. We know the FBI and the Sheriff Department here in Pima County have been investigating a ransom note that they've deemed to take seriously, but they were able to exclude this one and actually arrest this person. So I want to bring in our next live guest. This is Cody Lillick. He is our executive producer of investigations at my station 3TV and CBS 5 in Phoenix. Cody, I appreciate you so much for doing this. You went home and you're joining us live now. You have been working all day on this too. So while I was here kind of collecting everything new about what happened at Nancy's home, the ransom note, things like this, when they mentioned that somebody was arrested, you immediately got into the court documents to do some digging and find out who this person is and what the situation is around this. So who is this guy, and what were you able to find out about what happened and how he was arrested?
Yeah, good to be with you, Brianna. And this came as a little bit of a surprise, but as your experts have said, not unheard of, as we got the reports of the letters being received by TMZ and KOLD. You know, you would almost expect that some people would take advantage of this, and indeed that is what happened, according to the FBI special agent in charge. He revealed this at the press conference that you were at today, that a man from California, his name is Derek Colella, he was charged and it was unsealed in Tucson federal court just this afternoon, I believe right around 2 p.m. And he is accused of essentially texting the daughter and son-in-law of Nancy Guthrie. And he said, and I want to get it right, from it's a California area code that he used, stating, quote, "Did you get the Bitcoin? We're waiting on our end for the transaction." That's a direct quote from the text message that was received by, it says the daughter and son-in-law, and it has the initials AC. We believe that to be Annie. Both received it yesterday, and this is the key thing. This was received yesterday after the video that the Guthrie family released. So this is that video, that heartfelt video that you're seeing there with Savannah Guthrie and her two siblings. After this video was released is when this person, Derek Colella, is accused of sending this text message to Annie and her husband. And also it says in here that he's accused of actually placing a phone call. It does not say to which relative, but it says a relative of NG, being Nancy Guthrie. It says that that call was only for approximately 9 seconds, but authorities were able to track him down basically because agents say that he used what's called a voice over internet protocol way of masking his cell phone. So if you were to have your cell phone and get, say, a Google Voice number, that is voice over internet protocol. So you can make my Phoenix area number look like somewhere in California or Washington. And that is what this gentleman is accused of doing. And they were able to pretty easily track him down. It says in the court documents, they submitted an emergency disclosure request for this phone number that texts the Guthrie family. And based on the records that were provided, the email address that came back was Derek Colella's first name, last name at gmail.com. So very basic email address that was signed up with this phone number. So they were able to then look at the IP address for him, track him down to a residence in California, and the arrest was made this morning. We do not have records at this time that he has appeared before a federal court judge. I have checked records here in Arizona and California before we went on. No record that he has appeared before a judge yet, but he is facing now 2 federal court charges connected to what the FBI is calling an imposter ransom case. And they made it very clear at that press conference you were at that, make no mistake, if you try to take advantage of this incident for a monetary gain, they will take it seriously and they will find you.
Well, I find it interesting that they were able to track this one and trace it so quickly and deem it not credible. But we're still days after that original ransom note went out, and they still haven't been able to say yes or no. Why do you think that is? I know there's some limited details on the one that's still being investigated, but how do you believe they were so easily able to trace this one, but yet this other one, we're still having trouble?
I think a lot of the factors from just reading from what's in the court paperwork is because of the timeline of this one. This one came right after that video, that emotional video that everyone saw. And I will tell you, this gives a little more credence to the TMZ, KOLD, and another Tucson affiliate, that letter, because it mentions that as that demand was made on February 2nd. The family released a video on February 4th. And on February 4th, this individual is accused of texting the family. So this, and it specifically says on February 2nd, KOLD, a CBS affiliate in Tucson, received a ransom demand via their tip portal. So, it gives it a little more legitimacy, but there are still so many questions. I think the FBI agent in charge said, we're going to take it seriously until we can prove otherwise.
Right, and they have to. And I wonder, when we get to Monday, that second deadline and that other ransom note, what's this investigation going to look like? That will be very interesting from there. So this guy's facing very serious federal charges. Do we know, if he is convicted of them, what the sentence looks like?
I believe it is up to, it's a very significant penalty. I believe it is at least 20 years in prison, maybe more. But it is a very severe penalty because it is essentially making threats across telecommunications devices. And since the FBI is involved and it crossed state lines, you have that interstate factor as well. But I will also mention that he did, after being read his Miranda rights warnings, he talked to investigators and admitted to them that he did send the 2 text messages and used the account for the 2 text messages. And he said that he pulled the family's information from a website and said that he had been following along and watching TV. And he said that he wanted to send the text messages to see if the family would respond.
Well, that just gives that catch-22 of, let's get this out there in the spotlight. We need your help. But you've got these people who will take advantage of that in such a sick way. And obviously this man's like, I'm going to try to capitalize on this and just see what happens, which is horrific. And in an investigation like this and in a case like this, it is terrible to think people would do that, but they will. I got the feeling, too, the FBI and the sheriff are worried that other people will try to come up with something fake. And that's why the FBI special agent in charge was very serious about, hey, yeah, you try to do that, we're not messing around, and we're going to arrest you.
Yeah, and I will note one more thing about this individual. We were able to do a little bit of investigative work on him. He has a very unique last name, spelling, and also the year of his birth matches to a case that is being worked out of the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office, where they are working a case there where an individual with that same name, same birth year, was arrested as a group of 13 county employees accused of unemployment benefit theft. So we believe that appears to be the same individual that is now accused of this imposter syndrome, not syndrome, but case taking advantage of this unfortunate situation where a family releases a plea video and we have a false lead.
Right. So possibly a pattern on this person. Cody, I appreciate this so much. I know when I was dealing with this and you started pulling the court docs, I was like, hey, can you come on the show? Because you have so much more knowledge of this specific aspect of the case. And there's so much information coming in real time and so quickly that I did not have the time to go through all of the court docs. And that's why we have an awesome team. So I really appreciate you coming on the show, going through that, leading us through that investigation. Hopefully we won't have another one like that. But thank you so much for coming on. And I appreciate all your hard work behind the scenes for us here too.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Cody. All right, guys, coming up next, we have a former cold case homicide detective and police sergeant. I've worked with him for years. He's going to kind of take us through the high-profile nature of this case and of everything we learned from the sheriff today outside of the ransom, the investigation, the blood evidence, where this stands. He's going to take us through what that likely means for the case coming up. Stick with us on the other side of the break. We'll be right back. Thank you, everybody who's been with us this whole show. There's just so much to get to with this case and everything that we learned today from the sheriff. Of course, just resetting a little bit, Nancy Guthrie still missing tonight. The sheriff still asking for more tips to come in. We know there was blood evidence at her house. They're still investigating the ransom note. They have no identified suspects or persons of interest in the case at this hour. I want to bring in live now Troy Hillman. Troy Hillman, he's a former police sergeant and cold case homicide detective with the Phoenix Police Department. Troy, we've worked together for many years, and I know you've done a lot of work on high-profile cases that get a lot of attention. So when this one started evolving, I want to know your first thoughts, given that this is not a cold case, but there's still answers that we're missing. And so on the, kind of from the onset, what was your initial reaction to the case itself?
Well, as you know, this is obviously close to home because we live in Phoenix, and Tucson, has its share of problems, but nothing typically of this nature. And so I was kind of in shock. It just seemed like an odd timing of events. You have a very high-profile daughter that's getting ready to fly to Italy for the Olympics and be a co-host for that, and then she has to cancel her trip. It's just awful that you have an 84-year-old woman who's vulnerable. She's taken from her home, and then we don't know where she is.
Right. I want to ask you a couple of things that I know you have some great experience on with things that you've covered in the past. One of those being the difficulty as time goes on. We obviously know the first 24, 48 hours in an investigation in a missing persons case are critical, are crucial for finding somebody alive, getting to them quickly, all of those kind of aspects. We're now 5 days into this search. Based on what the sheriff said in the press conference today with where the case stands, what are the most difficult parts as time goes on?
Well, first of all, it's her health. She has, I guess, some heart issues and some other things. She requires medication, so that is obviously paramount. And if she goes without that, then she could die. But really, as time marches on, it does get more difficult. And basically, at this point, they're just looking for anything, any lead, any community member to say anything, and they're vetting all those leads. So it's a beehive of activity. There's tentacles going in every direction. Those are being vetted out, and then that information is basically being taken up to upper management, and then they decide what to put out to the media and out on social media to help, because they don't want to put out too much. And I always say it's important in this kind of investigation to not give out too much, because you don't want to compromise it if you end up on down the road obviously you're going to be in an arrest situation, and you don't want to lose it in court on a technicality.
Right. Can we be almost certain that they know more right now at this hour than they're releasing to the public?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're trying to be as transparent as possible. But on this investigation, these high-profile investigations, you got to keep some stuff back, just because of the example you mentioned earlier was the copycat. You just have people injecting themselves in situations that are bad actors, and they take the investigation in the wrong way. And then you have you only have so many resources at your disposal. And if these bad actors are that's taking it away from them working on other leads and triaging other things. So you really have to. It's a tightrope, and I feel bad for this sheriff. He's in a bad spot. You can tell he's really understands investigations, but he also wants to be transparent. So he's walking that tightrope, and trying to hold back information, but also trying to garner community and that help from the community and tips.
You make such a good point. I mean, it's such a tightrope to walk. What do you release that would be beneficial? What do you not release that could be detrimental? You have dealt with some pretty high-profile cases. This one, though, unfolding in what seemingly feels like record time, with the amount of media attention from across the world dawning down on Tucson, Arizona, and on the Pima County Sheriff's Department immediately. How does that high-profile nature complicate the case, help it, and also maybe hurt it?
Well, I think we already covered the hurt part, where information was put out maybe too quickly, and it was not, I think, in the act of transparency, maybe stuff. And then now you have kind of internet sleuths, and you have different people trying to figure things out, and maybe kind of taking the investigation in the wrong direction. Good in terms of, I think you've got a lot of community support. I think there are a lot of good people that want to help, and are praying for Nancy and her family. It is definitely, the media is very powerful and can do wonderful things, but also if bad actors, I like to refer to that as bad actors, take it in the wrong direction, then you've got problems, and you get like the guy with Ransom that was arrested. That takes up resources. But it does send a strong message of, hey, we won't tolerate this. We will find you quickly, and you could be facing up to 20 years, like you talked about.
Right. And the sheriff himself, can you talk about almost that internal pressure too, when you are leading an investigation and you have thousands of people coming at you with, we need things now, critical perhaps of how you're handling something, everybody has an opinion, everybody wants information, then you also are fielding thousands of tips coming in. What is that pressure like from an internal perspective?
Yeah, he's a human being, and he can only, he's probably running on minimal amounts of sleep. And everybody wants this solved. We want to find Nancy alive and well and get her back to her family. But there's just so much information coming in, and again, they have to vet it out, and then it goes up several layers, and then they have to figure out what we're going to disseminate, what we're going to hold back. So that is a vexing process. But the good thing is he has a lot of help now. He's been sent. Other agencies are helping. I think he's mobilized other agencies around there, like Tucson PD, and he's also has the full help of the FBI. So the good thing is he's not in this alone. He's got help, and that's what we need is teamwork, especially in this high profile. You've got so many facets of this investigation. It's just been moving in various directions, and it's kind of a wild ride. And again, I think we all hope and pray that Nancy is alive and well and will come back to her family.
Yeah, I agree. I'm monitoring some of the comments, the questions here. A lot of people saying, honestly, they want information, but they feel bad for the sheriff given this. He said he has assembled a critical incident team. So there's other sheriffs and other authorities here in the southern Arizona area that have come together to help. And then, yeah, we know the FBI conducting interviews in this, analyzing Nancy's cell phone that they have, trying to put location data together. But in these comments here, at least on YouTube, people are talking about that blood that was found on the front porch. I don't know if you got a chance to see some of the pictures and the videos of that. I saw it, and there's, some droplets that are on there. It's not that it's a huge amount of blood, but it is, it is noticeable. You walk up there and you say, these are droplets of blood, for sure. Some people are asking about, is this a concerning amount? Is it a serious amount? Could she have been hit and her nose bled from that if she was attacked? Looking at that blood and the amount of blood evidence that you've analyzed over the years, does that stick out to you at all about what that might tell us?
Well, we had experts with Phoenix PD on the department that were what we call blood spatter experts, and they'd gone through extensive training to figure out directionality, maybe what types of injuries would cause that type of blood evidence and how much. Like you said, there's not a tremendous amount that I saw. Again, we're operating on the premise that we saw everything, but it sounds like media basically put that out to where, and so we don't know if there was more blood inside the house. We're operating on just snippets of information, and I think we want to, it's human nature to want to get the whole picture and figure this out, but we can't with the information we've got. So I think that's where we have to just be patient and like the sheriff said, let them do their job, and they will keep the community informed as we move forward and as they can.
Yeah, I agree, and I know. Troy, I appreciate you coming on with your expertise. Thank you so much. If people want to follow Troy, he works on cold cases. He just wrote a new book about solving one of the biggest cold cases in Arizona. You are very dedicated to your craft, dedicated to this. Appreciate you coming on the show and giving us your analysis tonight.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Thanks, Troy. All right, guys, after the break, our final thoughts here, wrapping it up, what you can do, where you can call in tips and that reward money. We'll have the very latest in the last part of the show after the break. I appreciate everybody joining us for True Crime AZ Live tonight from Tucson. Again, with the facts, Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, still missing tonight. The search 5 days along now. We know she was abducted from her Tucson home in the Catalina Foothills neighborhood. There is confirmed her blood on her front porch. We have a ransom note that is still being investigated tonight. Her family, her daughter, Today's Show co-host Savannah Guthrie, her other daughter Annie, and her son Cameron, begging people to come forward. The FBI announcing tonight that they are giving out a $50,000 reward for anybody who can lead to the recovery of Nancy Guthrie or who can lead to an arrest and conviction in this case. They are asking for you to call in tips. I want to put up that tip line again. I'm going to read it here. The tips that you can call if you know anything, if you have video, information. No tip is a bad one. If you think that it could help the investigation, please call 520-351-4900. I'm going to say that again, 520-351-4900. I can tell you firsthand, this has affected the world, this community, so much. You can also call 1-800-CALL FBI as well. If you are wanting to call the FBI, then you've got the Pima County Sheriff's Department. So they're working together tonight as these agencies try to desperately race against time to find Nancy Guthrie. I appreciate everybody so much, your questions, your comments. You can find me on social media. I'm going to be covering this through the end. We all hope Nancy Guthrie is found safe and found alive. My heart goes out to the Guthrie family. Watching these videos is heart-wrenching. Being out here watching the officials working 24/7 is heart-wrenching. Being in the neighborhood is heart-wrenching. This is a crazy and unbelievable story. I truly, from my perspective, have never seen something so bizarre and so odd unfold in real time. I appreciate all of you guys following my coverage, our station's coverage. We will bring you the very latest. Our hearts are with the Guthrie family. I so hope we can find Nancy Guthrie and bring her home safe. Thank you so much. Have a good night.